Hello everyone, this is Tim. Welcome to episode 4 of North and South podcasts, and this is the second podcast of Health and Wellbeing. It's just me talking again this week. As I've said before, I aim to do a podcast as a minimum every fortnight and as a maximum once a week. Sometimes, you might have podcasts and they do like bonus episodes, extra episodes, etc. And it can be hard to keep on top of them. But we shouldn't really let that stop us from making more podcasts if we feel like doing them and we want to get it out there. So I do appreciate all the likes, follows, feedback, shares that people have been involved in. Last time I checked, I was approaching 300 listens. So thanks again for your support. Um, we've actually got a Twitter account now. So if you go to @NorthPodcasts, not a big fan of Twitter, but it's probably the best way of getting out there in terms of the social media landscape. Obviously, I don't want to get into arguments with people in the Twitter sphere because it's just a bottomless pit of echo chamber trolling, and I don't want to do that. Um, I don't want to spend my time doing that basically, but @NorthPodcasts is the Twitter feed or my Twitter account, so you can go on there and leave feedback, etc. I'll also have messages on there when I have a new podcast out. I have been sending out new podcast information through WhatsApp. Thanks if you're getting it that way, and if you're now following me and getting new episodes through Spotify, thank you also. This week I'm going to talk to you about forming a good habit. But before I do that, I want to just drop a plug for my friend Paul, who does Mersey Talk podcasts. He was the guy who influenced me to do a podcast, and he's got a very good podcast. He's done 11 episodes, and they're about culture and sport in the Merseyside area, but also beyond. And he's a great podcaster. Lots of different people on there, some quite famous as well. And if you want to find out about comedy, film, singing, football, the Beatles, whatever takes your pick, listen to those podcasts. They are very good. I've listened to all of them. So that's Mersey Podcasts. My Twitter address and Paul's link will be in the notes at the bottom of this podcast. Right, moving on to this week's theme for health and well-being. It's probably, it's one of the most important things you can do in life, and that is forming a good habit. If you smoke every day, drink every day, get involved in risky behaviour, that is often due to bad habit formation. If you get into good habits, keep going with those. But either way, habits can work for you or against you, and it's important that we're in control of them. In particular, I'm going to focus on exercise for this podcast because exercise is one of the easiest ways to make yourself feel better without going through tremendous effort. Now, that might sound a little bit contradictory, but hear me out. I used to play quite a bit of football and cricket. I became a father um, nearly 2.5 years ago now, so I have less time to spend a full day playing cricket or spending 2 or 3 hours out the house playing football and then coming back, needing a shower, being a bit tired and done in the next day with the baby, etc. So I'm finding that a little bit more challenging being a father, and also as I'm getting older with wear and tear, etc. Now, what some people do is when their bodies are no longer as young as they were, or they have responsibilities which prohibit how much time you can spend doing exercise, some people might turn away from exercise completely. But we need to keep at it to keep our bodies in good shape. We also can use exercise to make us feel better, make us feel more positive. We've all experienced that buzz, those endorphins you get after exercise when you feel really good. And I defy anyone to go on a walk or do exercise if they're having a bad day and feel bad right afterwards. You just don't do that. You always feel better. Yes, the chimp inside us, the negative mind, the chit chatter inside us often, oh, you haven't got time for that, oh, there's no point, I don't want to do that. And then afterwards, we feel better. So it's about forming a good habit and getting that discipline where you just do it. You do the good things without thinking, and you don't do the bad things without thinking. And it can take a while to build up these kinds of habits. Now, I'll give you an example in terms of me going gluten free. Over the last 9 months, I've gone gluten free. As you may recall, I've got a genetic illness. Now, me going gluten free, after about a month, I noticed some significant benefits. And it may well be that if you went gluten free, you might say, well, it hasn't improved me that much after a month. I feel a bit better in some ways, but I don't feel that much better or notice no difference. Now, for me, my health is an issue, so little improvements here and there can have a big impact. And going gluten free has had a whole host of improvements, which I won't go into now. What I realised early on, though, is that if I tried to just go gluten free like that, it wasn't going to work. So I needed to do it gradually. I needed to come up with a plan, and I needed to stick to that plan and see how it went. So the first thing I did is I went online and I identified gluten-free foods and replacements. And a colleague of mine who I worked with said that he'd noticed an improvement in his general health by going gluten-free. Now, I take quite strong medications, chemo medications, every week. So I'm thinking, well, if I can reduce those, which often make me feel a bit hangover like the day after I have them, sometimes 2 days after I have them, if I can do something to offset that or feel better or to possibly reduce those chemo drugs in the future, I would do that. So the first thing I did is I went online, looked at what had gluten in, and I thought, what of those things can I not give up? So I got gluten-free replacements for those things, and I did that over like 2 or 3 weeks, getting those things in. It was a bit more expensive. And I realised that gluten-free bread is quite nice. And I also realised that gluten-free pasta tastes pretty much the same. And that gluten-free crackers are quite nice as well. So I got used to those and replaced what had gluten in with those. So that was my first change. The second thing I did was I contacted my GP and asked if I could be referred to a dietitian. And the GP was a little bit reluctant. And then when I spoke to the dietitian, he was a little bit, well, I don't know much about your rare disease, but we can come up with a plan to go gluten free. And I told him what I'd done, and he listened. And we did a food diary for 2 weeks where I had to write down everything I did. And it was a bit of a nuisance having to do that, but I did it for 2 weeks. And then I sent it to him. He reviewed it, and then he called me. It was during lockdown earlier in the year, or when GPs weren't meeting people or doctors weren't meeting people face to face if they could help it. And he phoned me, he said, right, you are consuming gluten in these 4 or 5 things. And he sent me a leaflet saying this is what gluten is in. So what I did was I either eliminated those things or replaced them. And I've changed my diet a lot through my life. And one of the biggest pieces of advice I would give to anyone is that if you give something up completely, you must, well, it just makes things a lot easier if you replace it with something else, because the absence of something, you've got less options, it can be tough, and your animal brain can say, oh, you like that, let's go back to the way it was, the way we used to do it, that kind of control and what has worked in the past. Let's just go back to that and let's not challenge ourselves. So anyway, I cut out these gluten substances. I found out that gluten is in gravy, in brown sauce, which was a bit of a nuisance for like having roasts, etc. But anyway, I had to replace them, got gluten free, or just didn't get it at all. And about 3 weeks later, I had a really sore shoulder. I've had physio on my shoulder, and I struggled to wash my left side because my right shoulder is so sore. Anyway, I started to find it really easy, and I noticed a whole host of other improvements. One of which was that I didn't feel like falling asleep when I was driving home from work on the motorway, which was becoming quite a problem after a day in work on the motorway. That kind of one speed, one sound coming from the engine can send one off. and I was really fighting it. And I thought, this is dangerous. Once I went gluten free, I stopped feeling that tiredness on the way home from work. I thought, wow, something like that can have such a big difference on the effectiveness of you to get through the day. And that was just one of the things I noticed. So yeah, there was a whole other range of things which I felt was really good with relation to going gluten free as well. And I won't go into that here, but I basically changed it over 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time in 3 cycles before I was fully gluten free. I will have stuff that might have traces of gluten in. I'm not one of those. I'm not